Hello and welcome to this episode of Healing Digestion, where you learn everything you need to know about irritable bowel syndrome. As always, we'll be using the principles of ancient Ayurveda and the cutting edge science of functional medicine to decode everything you need to know about IBS. If you're new here, I'm Deepa. I'm an allied functional medicine practitioner and Ayurvedic practitioner, and I've been a yoga acharya for over 25 years. I bring together East and West, creating synergy and bridging divides, helping you decode everything that you need to know about digestion, sleep, and anxiety. World IBS Day was observed on April 19, 2025, where this year the theme was on early diagnosis and treatment. For IBS can be more than digestive symptoms themselves, they can impact the very quality of your life. If you've suffered from IBS at any point in your life, you would know that the symptoms can be extremely uncomfortable and they can range from a wide range of symptoms. And sometimes you might not even have got a diagnosis of IBS just as yet. Some of the symptoms of IBS can include abdominal pain, distension of the abdomen, bloating, severe pain from the bloating, constipation, diarrhea, loose elimination, mucus in the stool, to the point of extreme cases where it can lead to blood in the stool. And there can be patterns which alternate between constipation and diarrhea as well, where one day it is loose and the other day it is very, very tight. Most of these symptoms can be extremely uncomfortable, impacting everything from hunger to sleep to your mood and just your ability to eat food or process whatever food that you can eat, while also reducing the number of foods that you're capable of eating. How is a diagnosis of IBS made? These can vary quite a bit. In traditional circles, a doctor might ask for investigative tests such as an endoscopy or a colonoscopy. If you've ever done these tests, you can know how invasive they can feel and really uncomfortable. An endoscopy is where the scope is inserted through the mouth to look through the digestive tract, while a colonoscopy uses a similar scope that is inserted via the colon, which can be extremely uncomfortable and requires some amount of preparation as well, since it requires emptying out of the bowels before these tests can be made. Some doctors may also look at other tests such as a stool test to identify any pathogenic overgrowth. They can also look at food allergy and food sensitivity tests. And if you look at my video on food allergies, on food sensitivities, you would know that those tests capture a moment in time, and I've never really run these tests on most of my clients because I just feel that if the system is extremely imbalanced, if the GI tract is extremely imbalanced, you can show up as having allergies to several of foods, and this might not be the case forever. And it also means that the answer is not to eliminate and become more and more restrictive through life. So these are some of the tests that could be made. Some doctors do go into nuanced aspects such as asking about the frequency and quality of elimination. Very few doctors may ask about your state of stress, and we certainly know that stress and anxiety are very closely intertwined with digestive health, and certainly this can be a bidirectional axis, especially in chronic cases of digestive issues such as IBS. If you've investigated or researched yourself about IBS, you would know that overall they are classified into different subtypes, which can be IBS-C, IBS-D, IBS mixed or alternating, which will be listed as IBS-M or A. Now let's break this down from the aspect of doshas and the Ayurvedic perspective, because this can really give you an insight into a deeper understanding of IBS. IBS-C is generally described as patterns which are more specific towards constipation. So the inability to pass stool on a daily basis or even on a regular basis, and it can be extremely painful with eliminating. IBS-D is where it's more the pattern of diarrhea, where there's a lot of loose elimination. It can go through the system very quickly. You might not be able to control it as well, and this can come with copious amounts of pain, which can impact life because you can't really go out easily. IBS-M is where these two can mix. Now, it's very interesting for me to always find the synergy between what ancient Ayurveda and yoga spoke about with the modern scientific diagnosis. And what I've noticed is that the IBS-C and the IBS-M, which are alternating, can very much relate to what Ayurveda says is a state of Agni called Vishama Agni, which means that the pattern of Agni, the digestive fire, can be very alternating or erratic. So hunger can be different every day, elimination can be different, patterns can oscillate between constipation and diarrhea. So if you ever have been diagnosed with something like IBS-C or IBS-M, you would know that you can understand that Vishama Agni is a correlative state from an Ayurvedic perspective. Now, if you look at the IBS-D, which is IBS more prone towards diarrhea, this is very similar to what Ayurveda call a Tikshna Agni state, which means the digestive fire is very strong. It's too fiery. It's corroding the mucous membranes of the digestive tract because the acidic environment is extremely strong. So these two certainly require a very different approach, but let's come into that a little later. This is just to understand how the doshas and how the agnis really interplay with these modern labels. Now, we also have to look from the dosha perspective, where IBS-C is where the system is extremely dry. There's high vata dosha going on. IBS-D can be a state where pitta is very high. There's acidic environment. There's inflammation going on. So it's very important that rather than just getting caught up in that label, to look at what is going on uniquely to your body in a state of IBS. Certainly, when it comes to understanding based on these two perspectives of a science lens as well as an Ayurvedic perspective, it does matter that you get assessed by somebody who's qualified in both these areas, who can bring these two worlds together, unique to you, and help you get to the roots of your unique IBS and how it's showing up in your body. Let's look at root causes of IBS. And while this is a broad umbrella and yours might be a unique permutation and combination of any of these or maybe some more, this will help you to really be empowered in understanding what might be a overall overarching root cause of IBS from both perspectives. So let's look at it from an Ayurvedic perspective. The very first thing that you assess with Ayurveda is the state of Agni in each individual. Now, as I mentioned before, if it's more of an IBS-C or an IBS-M, the state of Agni could be what is called Vishama Agni, which is an erratic state, which means that Agni is showing up differently on a day-to-day basis. If it's more of an IBS-D, it could be that it is more of a Tikshna Agni state. The Agni is very fiery. The environment is hot and acidic. So this is one perspective. Now, in both these states, if Agni is imbalanced, two things happen. One is that your body cannot break down the even good food that you eat into nutrients and waste, and it also produces something called ama, which is toxins. Now, in the case of Vishama Agni, the erratic state of Agni, if you're prone to constipation, what will happen is that the system is so dry, you won't eliminate and you won't absorb nutrients as well, because think of it as an environment of the gut that is bare and cold. And in a Tikshna Agni state, the environment is acidic and inflammatory, so there can be permeable intestine, and it can run through the system so quickly it doesn't give the body time to absorb. In both these cases, you could form what is called ama, and if there is ama, these toxins can go block channels of the body, and therefore it can contribute to further loss of elimination, and there can be lots of symptoms related to this as well. The other aspect to consider is the doshas, and of course, it can come up very uniquely in each individual. High vata can certainly be a very big factor in IBS. What is called high vata in Ayurveda is really a system that has become dry and cold. But this also correlates, since vata dosha is the element of air and space. It regulates the nervous system. So it can correlate to what is called in science as a high cortisol, a sympathetic dominant state. And we know from modern research that when there is a sympathetic dominant state and we are in fight or flight, that the body shuts off non-essential function of digestion, immune function, and reproductive function, which means digestive enzymes get compromised. The whole digestive system is put on the back burner in order to manage that state of emergency, which the body identifies in a high cortisol state. Other root causes from an Ayurvedic perspective also include what is called depleted ojas. Ojas is the vitality. Think of it as what modern science call immunity. And when there is high vata, then we deplete ojas. So we don't have immune reserves and we don't have the capability to recover. And whatever we have gets amplified greatly as well. Now, from a functional medicine perspective, root causes of IBS can include a gut dysbiosis, which means the gut microbiome is tipping into a state that is imbalanced, where there is more pathogenic bacteria than beneficial bacteria. And this can be a result of frequent antibiotics, use of medications such as ibuprofens, anything that has sort of bombed the microbiome. It can also be due to nutrient deficiencies, which can cause certain shifts in the body's terrain. It can certainly be from poor sleep and high stress, which are also what Ayurveda calls as the high vata states. And it can be due to improper food sensitivities. Maybe at that moment the body is imbalanced and any food that you're eating is further contributing to the problem. So in both perspectives, it's very important to identify what is causing the problem based upon unique to your body. And first step is to remove these. There are so many nuances when it comes to labeling a food. Sometimes you might hear that fermented foods are the gut powerhouse. And I've seen clients come to me all the time who have started fermented foods and have only gotten worse. Now, from the explanation, when I went into the root causes of IBS from the perspective of Ayurveda and functional medicine, you would by now know that IBS-D, which is a diarrhea pattern, can be very similar to what Ayurveda calls the Tikshna Agni state, which is an inflammatory acidic state. In that situation, a fermented food can be extremely detrimental, making things worse. There are certain recommendations for foods for IBS, which are generally considered to be what is called low FODMAP. And I really want to say that stay tuned for another video on FODMAP from an Ayurvedic perspective. But I have had people who have come to me saying that they started the low FODMAP diet and they've been on the low FODMAP diet for 2 years for their IBS and it's not helped them. One of the first things is no therapeutic diet should be kept for that long a period of time because they're very restrictive and they can lead to nutrient deficiencies by themselves. It's very important if you do go on therapeutic diet like low FODMAP that you work with somebody who's qualified, who can introduce the diet for a short period while doing the work to heal the gut and then take you off the diet. This is very important. Overall, soluble fiber that are soft can be very helpful in IBS, such as cooked oats, certainly not raw oats, fruits like cooked ripe bananas, vegetables like carrots and sweet potatoes that are cooked. Fermented foods, while they can be perceived to help with beneficial bacteria, as I said, it really depends whether it is a pattern that is very fiery or it's very dry. In a state where the gut is extremely dry, perhaps fermented foods in small amount can be helpful initially, but this really requires some nuanced understanding of what's happening in your body. Also, if you look from an Ayurvedic perspective, there are variations in this IBS which might require different foods, but for somebody who's having any sort of IBS, most of these cooked soft soluble fibers, cooked apples which are high in pectin that can heal the gut mucosa can be very helpful, as also cooked oats, cooked rice, cooked moong dal, sweet potatoes, okra. So can these foods be tailored to you, and that is something that requires a unique approach. Are there magical pills for IBS? While supplement companies can make you feel that that might be the case, I would really say that getting a unique diagnosis and targeting a sustainable protocol of diet and lifestyle is what will take you towards full recovery, or else I see quick fixes and relapses all the time. And the true answer is that healing takes time. What about herbs such as ashwagandha? Because obviously, since IBS has a high cortisol pattern as part of that whole systemic imbalance, it can seem as if ashwagandha can be the miracle herb. However, ashwagandha taken very loosely through the GI tract, ashwagandha is a very heating herbs, and I see recommendations by health expert worldwide, perhaps who are not qualified in Ayurveda, making recommendations for ashwagandha. And ashwagandha in that hot environment can make the liver very hot. If the liver gets extremely hot, then all the blood that flows through the body will be what Ayurveda calls hot, but really what modern science would say inflammatory, spreading inflammation throughout the body. However, ashwagandha used transdermally can be very safe for most people, so using it in Abhyanga oils can be very, very helpful. So what can you do to treat IBS? Your digestive system has an intuitive intelligence, and it takes patience to rebuild the intuition which has gotten upset, so do be patient. Begin with a month of focusing on foods that are extremely easy to digest, such as cooked apples, even though it is considered a high FODMAP food, cooked rice, moong dal, cooked sweet potatoes, gentle herbs like coriander versus potent herbs such as red chilies, cooked carrots, lauki or bottle gourd, which is extremely helpful. It's cooling and soothing to the GI tract. Okra, even though it is considered a high FODMAP food. Cooked oats, ghee, which builds the gut mucosa and helps the beneficial bacteria to proliferate once again. Do stay tuned for a video on ghee very soon. Focus on restoring the right circadian rhythm with meals and sleep. Remember, if there is a Vishama Agni state where the state of Agni is very erratic, you need to train Agni by feeding food at the same time every day, by going to bed at the same time every day, and being intentional about practices like yoga nidra, which are extremely safe and which can calm down the cortisol and help that overactivated nervous system regulate itself in a way where it starts to prioritize essential functions such as digestion. The food that can really help you to look deeper, even if it's in whatever state of IBS, is aloe vera. Keep in mind that fresh aloe vera can be very potent as a laxative, so do be cautious when you try that. Avoid anything that is scraping and sharp. So I've seen lots of people in constipation to use potent triphala, which can make the situation worse, which is, so if you do react and your constipation get worse with triphala, you may want to slow down. Use instead gentle demulcent teas, which are what can rebuild the mucous membrane, such as chamomile, fennel, ginger, and marshmallow root, and keep them very light decoctions. And meanwhile, start to look deeper and get to the roots. Stay tuned for another video coming up sometime soon on the low FODMAP diet from an Ayurvedic perspective, and be sure to hit the bell so you don't miss any future videos.